Further ado, I'm going to hand over to Delisa, who I know will inspire us. So Delisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Della, for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. I hope it's a good Friday for you and you're all looking forward to the weekend. So they've already given an introduction to me and the topic today. So I'll just dive right in, and then hopefully we have a more dynamic discussion after. So I'm not the only one speaking. So CropLife is representing the plant science industry. And today the topic is on sustainability. A very big word has been thrown around a lot recently. So what does that exactly mean? And what is the role of plant science innovation, which sometimes tend to be seen as more of a negative contributor to sustainability than a positive one. And so if I could break down the word sustainability, I have put it down in these three ways. And the reason why I talk about it in positive is because we need to really transform that narrative and not just transform it in form of narrative, but by making active contributions through the innovations that our role is in to help with sustainability. So when we talk about sustainability, we are referring to areas that we can contribute positively to the climate, positively to nature, and also definitely for the farmers. And whatever we do in the climate and nature also definitely helps the farmer, as you can see in some of the examples that I will be providing later. So in the subsequent slides, I will just be sharing some of the different ways that the plant science industry has been contributing in these aspects. Just going to touch and go a little bit for the sake of this coffee chat's purpose, and then we can dive in for more questions if needed. So let's talk about soil health, which is a very important part of the climate. It's also something that's so related to agriculture, because a lot of farmers need to plow and till the fields to remove weeds to grow crops. Unfortunately, that's also where 10% of the world's carbon dioxide is stored in. And when they plow the fields, that really contributes to the carbon footprint. But more importantly, when they till these fields, they're removing a very nutrient-rich layer of soil. And that's super important for crop growth. And by removing weeds through tilling to help with their crops is actually kind of counterproductive for them, and it takes 500 years just to form 2 centimeters of that topsoil. And of course, soil erosion is also something that we have seen causing a lot of climate issues. And over the last 150 years, about half of the planet's fertile soil have already been eroded. And so plant science innovation includes weed-resistant biotech crops and herbicides that allow crops to grow by controlling weeds without the need to plow the fields. And that's something that we do everywhere in the world, but specific to the Philippines, there was an interesting project that was done in sloping areas. Sloping areas are definitely more prone to soil erosion and therefore was seen once as unfarmable. And because of these technologies and including other farming techniques like growing plants around to prevent soil erosion, they were able to start planting corn in those sloping areas, which is also corn also being a cash crop in the Philippines. So these are some ways that we help with not just the climate, but ultimately benefiting the farmer. Another aspect for climate is water conservation, also another area where the agriculture industry is seen to be a culprit and both the victim. And that's where innovation in the techniques that we use for agriculture plays a part. So for example, drones that are used for pesticide application as compared to the knapsack sprayers that farmers use actually significantly results in water saving. So actually it only uses 3% of the amount of water that's usually used in the knapsack or tractor spray. And this technology is something that's becoming more popular, and CropLife Asia has been promoting it very actively among governments in Asia. Another aspect of water conservation is in the partnership that CropLife member companies are part of. In this multi-stakeholder alliance called the Sustainable Rice Platform, where different partners involved in agriculture does training for farmers for rice. Sustainable rice production, and one of the techniques that has been part of this training, it's this alternate wetting and drying technique, which prevents fields from being irrigated 100% of the time, which we through research, we have found is not necessary, and that has allowed to save water consumption by 38%. So then let's move to, in terms of nature, there's been a lot of concern around biodiversity and how that has been affected by agricultural intensification. And so the role of the innovation companies in the plant science industry is to help increase productivity such that the same amount of land can produce more crop yield and therefore reduce the intensification of land. Of course, there are more than that factors. There are also ways that we are exploring innovation to ensure that even agricultural lands are diverse. So ways that we increase productivity is through the innovation of our products itself, like pesticides and biotech crops that minimize crop losses to pests. We also have the techniques such as crop rotation, where we are responsible for training farmers on different techniques that help to increase biodiversity. And finally, the adoption of precision agriculture, where imaging, detection, spray results in greater efficacy of plant protection products. And all of this help to increase productivity with the same amount of land, and therefore reduce the need for land intensification to feed a growing population. For biodiversity, it's also another way where we are transforming that negative conversation into positive. Pesticides are seen, like not just to control pests, but sometimes inadvertently it affects beneficial insects like bees, which are actually useful pollinators. And so there was a very good project that was done in 2016 in India, where we had farmers join a hive rental program where they learn how to rear hives and rear bees, but at the same time we're trained on using pesticides so that they know how to use pesticides while managing beneficial insects that they're working with, so giving them that responsibility, especially to own these hives, make them a bit more aware of like, okay, so I cannot be spraying the same time that I release these bees to pollinate my fields. And the project outcomes are very encouraging. There was 24% increase in yield through the use of pollinators. 90% farmers also reported better quality of crop, and there was a 51% increase in income. And based on this kind of programs where they see that there's a coexistence with beneficial insects, farmers were incentivized to apply pesticides safely to protect the beneficial insects for the ecosystem. And this project won several awards, and we later scaled this up in Thailand, Philippines, and China. So at the end of the day, these examples I shared on how we try to transform that negative to positive contributions for the climate and nature and sustainability ultimately also helps to improve sustainable agriculture and improve our protection of farmers. At the end of the day, our goals as a plant science innovation industry is to protect farmer health and safety, to protect farmer livelihoods, and also create sustainable farms for the future generation of farmers. And how we do that is through sustainable innovation, doing R&D to find more sustainable products to ensure safe use for farmers and environment. And then we talk about techniques also, not just product innovation, but innovation in the techniques that we use, including one very important aspect of resistance management by training farmers not to overuse pesticides. And also in the ecosystem, sometimes there is an attack of invasive species. And that's where, as R&D industry, we are at the forefront of coming up with the rapid innovations and knowledge to help support the control of invasive species that not just affect a farmer's crop dramatically, but also affects the ecosystem balance because of invasive species. So that's just a short overview of me breaking down what sustainability means for the plant science industry and our role to transform that negative image, to something that's positive, knowing that farmers at the end of the day benefit from such sustainability practices. And that's the end of my presentation, and I'll leave it now to Q&A.
Thanks so much, Delisa. That's a really really nice overview. I think gives a flavor of the work that you're doing. And as you say, it's sometimes it's a controversial industry to work in, but I think it's a very necessary industry when you look at some of these invasive pests and some of the really damaging pest disease and weeds that affect tropical agriculture. There is a need for innovation and ways to help farmers with managing these problems. So I'm not seeing any questions in the chat so far, but please don't be shy. If anyone has any questions, speak up. And I'm sure Delisa will help. Delisa, I think you can see the chat there, but there's a question about pollinators, which I think is it's a really critical topic. Over to you.
Yeah, so thanks, Elaine, for the question. Yes, well, very directly, pesticides are aimed at managing pests and killing pests. So yes, definitely it could pose a problem for bees, and so there are ways to manage that. Firstly, if as an industry we do have labels on the pesticide product if it is something that affects the bees, because for example it is applied in the area where the bee usually flies to collect its pollen or collect the honey, sorry. So for those, there are specific instructions on how to use that pesticide or, to spray at a certain time. So for example, we have also done a lot of research. Bees fly at a certain time of the day when it's not too hot, or when it's not when there's still sunlight. So those are the times where pesticides shouldn't be sprayed. That's also where, if I can cross a little bit of the innovation, we talked about drones just now. With the use of advanced technologies like GPS, drones can in fact be flown at night when bees do not fly. That's a way that we can combine to create a coexistence with bees. At the end of the day also, we talk about application techniques, and pesticides is usually the last resort when other forms of pest control methods are insufficient to control the pests. And this also again helps with the reduction of use of pesticides on fields. So yeah, they all come together. It's a practice that we require to train farmers to protect beneficial insects like bees. Okay, so
Delisa, can I add a build? I mean, I think Delisa has explained very well that the priority of our industry is to make sure that products are used in the best way to minimize an environmental impact. But I think it's also worth mentioning that a lot of the CropLife member companies have also been involved in a lot of good science, so a lot of research to try and understand what's the root cause, working with a lot of other scientists outside of our industry. And I think what's made it very complicated is that bee health has been affected by a number of things over the last decade. So it's pesticides are the factor, and we need to make sure we manage that. But bees themselves suffer from pests. So there are mites and viruses that can impact the health of bees. And I think sometimes what we need to do is make sure we understand that so that we're addressing the problem in the right way, because suddenly, let's say, removing all pesticides, that might not be the right answer because there are other things that are impacting bee health. So I think just to say that nobody wants to see bees being impacted. Nobody wants bees to die. We need bees and other pollinators as well. Okay, they're part of the ecosystem, and obviously they are needed for pollination. So this has been a huge area of research for our industry. Sorry, Delisa, back to the Q&A. I think you've got a number of questions coming in.
Yeah, I do. Since we talked about drones, maybe I could answer Chris's question first. How are technologies such as drones made accessible for smallholder farmers? Yeah, in the case of drones, it's actually something that was driven by commercialization of drones. So companies like DJI were very aggressive in the last few years in spreading this technology to farmers around Southeast Asia. I think first of all, economies of scale, once there is a lot of drones being used, the cost is driven down, but also usually drones are not flown directly by the farmers. The same way tractors are not usually bought by the farmer itself. Instead, it is usually contracted out by service providers. And so, by having those service providers acquire the drones and then servicing different farmers, that's how the cost of it becomes accessible to smallholder farmers. Okay, for Randy's question, how do you think about the approach of plant breeding to tackle the pest and disease issue? Susan, would you be able to answer that perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely. I can try, Delisa, and please add your builds. I mean, absolutely. I mean, plant breeding is absolutely essential for let's say, delivering better crops with better yields, as well as for helping with pest and disease resistance, and to be more competitive, to help with weed problems as well. And I think really what we're finding is that in the current situation in tropical agriculture, as Delisa's mentioned, what we need is an IPM or integrated approach. So really the best way to get the best yields and to manage pest, disease and weeds is to have good varieties, good competitive varieties with resistance to pest and diseases, but with an IPM approach to using pesticides as and where necessary, and all other kinds of practices. I mean, Delisa mentioned soil and the importance of soil health. So it's important to try and use the right kind of tillage practices and water management in rice. So all of these things together really are the best way forward. But absolutely, plant breeding is part of that and must be part of that, whether it's traditional breeding or whether it's using biotechnology or gene editing. So yes, not sure if that's a complete answer, but I hope that helps.
Thank you, Susan. Yeah, I just thought I'd get the scientists to answer that question in a little bit more in detail. And then there's another question from WOMAG on pesticide residue limit standards. Are they upheld in Southeast Asia? Well, the answer is yes, but well, this is an obligation legally. There are standards set by the United Nations on the different residue limits for different types of food based on several studies, and this is being aggregated by different countries based on the daily intake of food. It's actually extremely detailed, the different countries. So for example, potatoes might be consumed more in the West than in Asia. So they have a different residues limit for that. So all of this is being harmonized at an international level. And for Southeast Asia, exports to go out, it has to meet this residue limit standards that's been set at international levels. Of course, when we talk about domestic imports, these might miss. There are certain lack of enforcement, and that's something that governments out. But however, I think governments are also very concerned. We've seen a lot of articles on whether there's pesticide residues. So it's something that our industry has to continue working on, training farmers and ensuring that it's something that helps to benefit farmers at the end of the day. Again, if they can meet export standards, that helps to create a premium on their crops, that helps to improve their livelihoods. And again, the fact that if residues have been exceeded, that is actually a very dangerous sign that it could lead to resistance issues in the future also. So these are all very interlinked issues that we are actively working on. It's a day-to-day work for us as an industry to ensure that residue limit standards are being upheld. In terms of the influence of tropical storms and climate-related considerations, I assume this is a separate question from the first. Yes, definitely climate change is a huge issue for food security. We've seen that a lot, floods, droughts, these are all affecting crop productivity. And then sometimes we are also contributing to it more by things like soil erosion, land intensification. So again, back to the examples that I give, our innovation is important to help ensure that we continue to increase productivity, but also prevent things that exacerbate the climate problem because of us. I hope that answers the question. And I will now, Priya's question, what are the top challenges to achieving farm level sustainability? Okay, let me think about this one. The top challenges to achieving farm level sustainability. I think one of the top challenges I would say is in implementation. I've given a lot of different examples, but to implement it on a big scale, especially in Asia, where we are home to many smallholder farmers, where it's very scattered, it's, you know, it is not always easy to achieve that consistent farming and agricultural practice that we advocate for. But when we talk about the climate, it is definitely, it's impossible to isolate, you know, within one country doing it better than the other. Everyone has to be more consistent. So I think that implementation and scale is one of the biggest challenges to creating sustainability. And then also, of course, farmers, a lot of them are in rural environments. They are usually economically a little bit more backward than others. There is a need to balance out that economic urgency with ensuring that they don't overspray pesticides, you know, in that over concern of protecting their crops against pests. So some of this psychological challenges on pest control is also another issue that we face with smallholder farmers. Susan, is there anything that you would also like to add here? I think it's good to get different perspectives on the kind of challenges that we have.
I don't know. I think you've explained it well, Delisa, so I don't think I can add anything. What I would ask is maybe a build on that question, and that is, how do you think having digital tools and being able to use better ways of communication is going to help sustainability? Are you optimistic about that?
Yeah, I think that when it comes to, it is so important to have technologies. You know, drones, for example, is something that kind of, it just started maybe 3 years ago, but you can see today that there is so many more drones being flown around that has significantly helped to improve efficacy on the field. It has improved the environmental issues. It has also provided a way of professionalizing that industry through the support of service providers that provide such a technology to smallholder farmers. Technology is one thing that we definitely should leverage, but also through the example of drones, I would say that the value of businesses of using commercial models to drive sustainable models of agriculture, of business running, that is also a very good way of achieving economies of scale and a sustainable model for agriculture.
Thanks, Delisa. I don't see any other questions in the chat now. Does anyone else have any other question or comment while we have Delisa with us? Well, I hope it's been enlightening and inspiring for you. It certainly has been for me. And as I said, I really have a passion for this challenge that we have, really, to make sure that we can keep agriculture productive, especially in this part of the world where, you know, as I've said, there's so many pest disease and weed challenges, and farmers need to keep ahead of all of this. So I think there's no doubt that we need innovation, and that innovation needs to bring productivity, efficiency, but at the same time respecting the environment. So Delisa, thanks so much. Any parting words from you? Anything you'd like to see from the WOMAG team?
Well, I think there's one final question from Elaine on whether these services for drones are subsidized given that farmers have low income. There are, for example, in China, there are a lot of subsidies that are given to drones, and that has encouraged the uptake. And that's also something that we encourage governments to take a look at. But it's really driven at a government level. However, I can really see that the interest from governments is very genuine on drones. It's a very promising type of technology to support agriculture in Asia. So in terms of parting words, I would just like to say, first of all, thank you to everyone for joining today. And there is another question. Can you talk about the efforts made for banana crop related diseases or any other examples of crop related diseases? Again, Susan, if it's okay, would you like to answer that as a scientist?
I can try. I did work in banana plantations for a few years in a previous life. Bananas, I mean, this is a tricky one. It's the most extreme monoculture in the world. Yes, you've got one variety one crop grown across thousands of hectares, both here in Asia as well as in parts of South America, Central America. So what this means is that disease can spread throughout the whole area and it's difficult to control. So there is a lot of fungicide use for controlling, first of all, the foliar diseases, but now there's bigger problems as well of the fusarium problem, which is a soil-borne disease. So there is no panacea. I mean, a lot of the banana companies themselves have a lot of research and development capability. So they are looking as well at ways to manage these kinds of diseases in a more sustainable way. But I think really, again, I come back to the same mantra. It's all about diversification. And if farmers are using too much of one kind of product, then there is a very high risk that resistance will happen. And that's something we're seeing in bananas. But it's not easy. I mean, the banana industry certainly is looking at varieties and looking at developing resistance in the varieties. But it's not easy to replace all of the bananas with a different, better variety at once, because consumers are very picky about their bananas. We need to have bananas that can be transported long distances. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why the current variety is so popular, despite the fact that it has a lot of susceptibility to disease. So it's a big challenge, but we need to work on this, because for sure, the consumers of bananas, often bananas are exported to Europe, America, Japan, and so on. I mean, these are the kinds of consumers that want to know that their bananas have been grown in a sustainable way and with minimal pesticides. So it's certainly an area of a lot of intensive research. So I don't think I gave a good answer, but I'm not sure there is a good answer, but it's very, very important to the industry to look at this.
Okay, great. Thank you. And if there are no questions, I would return to my parting words. So I'm glad for the comments. Thank you, Elaine. Thank you, Chris, and everyone here. For saying it's interesting and that you learn a lot. I think that's part of my parting words. That sustainability is such a big word. It's a vast word. People love using it, but I think it'd be great if we continue to have sessions like this where we could break it down. Use concrete examples to help each other learn more about what this big word really means in our different parts of our lives and in our different roles. A lot of different companies now have formed this sustainability role, but we're still navigating what that really means, and it's something that we could learn more about and make more of an impact if we could have more sessions like this to do knowledge sharing around this topic. So thank you very much for the opportunity today, and I look forward to also learning about this topic from the rest of you.
Thanks so much, Delisa. Really appreciate it. And I think you might be aware, everybody, that Delisa is actually in Europe at the moment. So it's some unearthly hour in the morning. Thanks so much, Delisa. Really appreciate it.
No problem. Well, thank you, everyone. Hope you have a good Friday and a weekend.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Delisa. Just before you drop off, I just wanted to let everyone know about some of the upcoming WOMAG events. So let me just share my screen quickly. I would definitely ask you all to stay tuned. On the 17th of November, we have a really great event called Meal with a Mission. This is something that we hold annually, being able to showcase, let's say, future food and farming techniques through sort of an intimate, dining setting. So yeah, please, scan the QR code to learn more, and we hope to see many of you there in person. I'll just leave that for a second in case you want to scan it. And then next we have, other upcoming events, such as the coffee catch-ups and fireside chats. So please do follow us on LinkedIn, and we also are, available on website, newsletters. So yeah, please do stay in touch. And we're really happy for all of you for joining today. Thank you for all of your interactive questions. Thank you, Delisa and Susan, for these amazing insights. And thank you so much for staying up so late. Can I just ask everyone if you're okay for a selfie? If everyone could just turn on their cameras. Fuying, can you help me just take the picture? I'm just going to put it on full screen mode. Don't be shy. It would be really great just to see your lovely faces this morning. Okay, let's see. Thanks, Ranthi. There we go. Chris, we'd love to have your face as well. Our male champion for today. All right. No problem. Okay, Fu Ying, should we take a picture? All right, let's go. 1, 2, 3.
Yep, done.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.